All right, welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of the Audit Cast. So, this one is going to be all about tips and tricks on how to pass your CPA exam. This applies to anybody who is either working and studying, or maybe you're in that gap before you start working and you've graduated school and you're studying. Maybe for some reason you're still in school. Not sure if that works, but nonetheless, these are some tricks that can apply to everybody. So, first things first, I learned this in college. I should qualify myself before I try to persuade anybody on anything. So, just a little bit about my experience. 2 seconds. I passed all 4 CPA exam parts on the first try. I'm sure there was a horrendous amount of luck involved in that, and I'm sure that there was coincidence and timing and all that, but nonetheless, it happened. So I'm not saying you have to take the route that I'm going to propose here, but I'm going to tell you what worked for me, and if this can help you at all, that would be awesome. I would hope to help. So, without further ado, here's my list of tricks. So one thing that I did that I really liked, this was a couple years ago, so it was before I was savvy enough to be able to have the means to get audio file lectures, so I kind of had to do my own version of this, but nonetheless, get your lectures somehow on an MP3 version, so you can throw them into your phone or your iPod or your computer or a CD or whatever device you have, and you can listen to your lectures at random times, either while you're driving or exercising or just cleaning your house or whatever you're doing, going for a walk. Just keep the lectures on something you can always listen to. It's really handy because you don't even have to actively listen, but I feel like having that extra little bit of time to lectures you might have already heard before, having that extra exposure really helped. I even had it playing sometimes when I was at work, which I don't know if I would suggest that, depending on how distractible you are. But if I was doing some really mindless vouching or something, I would just have my lectures going, and I just have an earbud in and just kind of casually listening. I wouldn't recommend that for any new lectures, but anything you've already listened to, or kind of the auxiliary stuff, maybe the extra pieces that you're not going to focus on as much. I know I didn't put a lot of time into the government accounting, like for the FAR exam. I didn't spend a lot of time studying that part just because I ran out of time. But nonetheless, and if you guys want to see the scores that I did get for my exams, you can go to the Instagram page at the Audit Cast, and I posted a picture of my results there, so you can check that out. Let's see here. Another thing that was huge for me, this really helped, was using flashcards, whether that was making flashcards or using the ones that were provided with the lecture series. The flashcards were big, but having flashcards and making flashcards and all that's great, but really you need somebody else to do them with. You need a friend that's either studying, a friend that will be willing to help you through this. In my case, I had a significant other that I solicited help from, and she would just do flashcards with me in the evenings, and she probably hated it, but it really helped. And actually, we had some pretty good times doing it. It was kind of fun, so it was a challenge. But flashcards worked really well for me. It just really that repetition of getting things ingrained into your head is really valuable, I think, at least if you're a learner similar to me, and maybe you are, maybe you're not. But the flashcard thing was huge. Oh, excuse me. The flashcard thing was huge, and having somebody to do them with was equally as important. Another thing was, and this is probably the biggest tip and the most important thing that I found, most important tool that I used during my studies was just doing as many questions as possible. If you can just sit down and knock out hundreds and hundreds of questions, thousands even, on your lecture series, whether it's Becker, Roger, or BISC, or CPA Excel, or whatever it is, there's always some sort of electronic version of questions. And just crush them. Just do as many as possible, because that is going to be your biggest asset in doing these exams. I'm telling you, 60% of the test or whatever is multiple choice questions. So when you do these questions over and over again, you really, really start to memorize the information. But then beyond that, you really start to learn it. Like, you'll be able to take that information and apply it. So it even translates over into the simulations. I know, like, when I was doing my simulations on the actual exam, I hadn't done any prior studying for those. Like, I hadn't done the software version of the simulations. I just never had time. But because I knew the information from lectures and studying so many questions, it was like the answers were already there. I knew all the concepts and the applications of the calculations and things, that I was able to apply them to my simulations. So I can't stress this enough. Do as many questions as possible. Don't go for 50% or 60% of the questions. Do 100 or 80% or 100%, and do them over and over again, because that's what's really going to burn this into your brain. Another thing is, I've heard people do some different techniques. I've had friends that have unsuccessfully tried some kind of alternative approaches to studying. Like, they'll study for all parts of the exams, and then, over a course of time, take one test and then refresh on a section, and then take that section, so on and so forth. It didn't work too well for the couple friends that I had do that. So I would recommend studying for one at a time and just knocking that one out. The length of time is really up to you. I took about 45 days of studying for each. So if you can do it quicker, that's awesome. If it takes you a little longer, that's probably your safer bet. 2 months would probably be safe. The other thing that I found was really useful, and I've had some friends with really high success rates that do this, is they chunk their time. And that kind of goes hand in hand with my next point, which is make sure and have a life during the studying process. I know Becker will tell you that there's an inverse relationship or whatever between happiness and CPA exam scores, or whatever the guy says. And there's to an extent that's true, but it's not a linear equation. It's a parabola. There's an apex to that curve. So back to chunking your time. Take a couple hours, whether that's 2 or 4. Make that your study time in the morning or early part of the day, and then have 2 to 4 hours later in the day where you can sit down and focus and study. But don't try to do like 8-hour study sessions. That's just, it's not going to be valuable to you. You're really going to get burnt out. There's endless studies on this. So this isn't just my experience speaking. There's endless studies on chunking time and distractions and the assistance of distractions and getting things done and learning processes and things. So chunk your time a little bit, and also remember to have a life during this thing. Like, pick something that you can do to kind of balance your life out. Maybe that's sign up for a 5K or a half marathon or something like that you can also have as a separate focus, but that's completely opposite. There's no mental capacity needed. Maybe you sign up for a CrossFit class or a yoga class or something, and make that part of your routine. Because that's going to be huge to balance yourself out. Like, when I was doing mine, I was training for some longer distance running races, and it really helped to just have a mind numbing activity that was physically stressful too, because I feel like the physical exercise part is important. It's just, you're sitting there so much and you're putting so much brain power into something that you need a physical release. But not just that, but also like during my training runs, I just get so tired and exhausted and think, this is terrible. I don't want to be running anymore. I'd rather be studying. So you kind of go back and forth, right? Like you're studying so long, you're just like, oh, I'd rather be doing my training. And then you're training, you're like, I'd rather be doing my studying. So it kind of is like a forced nice balance. A little bit odd, but the whole CPA exam process is a little bit odd. But definitely try to get some sort of routine going during this process. Try to have some sort of physical outlet and have some sort of alternative goal, something simple and achievable that you are implementing during this process. So you can really have a balance to your focus. So those are the big ones. I have a couple more tips. I would say that studying during busy season is also a really good idea. It's probably not something that people commonly do, but it really depends on your busy season. So if your busy season is a 1 a.m. every night, 7 days a week type of busy season, then chances are you're not going to be able to do this. But if you're getting out at 10 o'clock pretty consistently during your busy season, then yeah, you should study. There's no reason. I mean, there's plenty of time to get an hour of studying in a night. You know, you're not going to do it in 2 weeks, but you should study right through. I took an exam on February 21st, I think, and I took an exam on May 21st. So I mean, I was studying from December through January, all through busy season for that February 21st exam, and then I studied from April through or March through April to take that May exam. So it's very doable. My busy season wasn't crazy, so that's the one caveat there. If your busy season's too crazy, it's probably not that doable. But if you're working until 10 or you're not working every day on the weekends, it's like your life's already gone during busy season. You may as well have something productive as well. And that kind of feeds into that having two purposes, right? You're trying to file a 10K and trying to finish a CPA exam section. So it's kind of a win-win there. And it will take a lot out on you. It will take a serious toll on you, but so will busy season. So you may as well piggyback that time of craziness. Another quick tip is just change up your venue every so often. Don't go to the same place and do the same thing unless, there's always a caveat, right? The answer in accounting is it always depends. But unless something works so perfectly for you and you've taken 2 or 3 exams and crushed them and aced them or done really well or whatever and had your, you've had your success the way you're doing it. And I guess if that's the case, if you've passed 2 or 3 exams and you've never failed one and you feel like you're doing it just fine, blah, blah, then you shouldn't even be listening to these tips because it sounds like you already have it figured out. But if you haven't started yet, or you're struggling a little bit, or the approach you're taking is working, but it's taking too much of a toll out on your life, then implement some of these. And like I said, change your venue a little bit. The value that adds is immeasurable. And I don't mean it's like so profound it's immeasurable, but I mean it's literally immeasurable. Like I don't know how beneficial it is. I remember that there were some studies done during the late Industrial Revolution that showed that changing light settings in factories increased production of factory workers. So that's like my loose tie to the support behind my conjecture here. But just change it up a little bit. And practically what that means is pick different spots to study every so often. You have your home spot where you can study at home. Make your little nest to where you can actually get things done, but then also have a couple coffee shops you can go to and study at. And I'm not saying Starbucks, nothing against Starbucks, but it's not always the best spot to study because it's sort of designed for hanging around and doing schoolwork, and everyone's a little bit different. But if you can find one of those kind of neighborhood coffee shops, a lot of times they have a little better culture of students or or people coming into work for a couple hours or whatever, and they have a little bit better places to sit and things like that. So find your little neighborhood coffee shop, and they usually have a little bit better culture, like I was saying. And the benefit to that type of setting is you're surrounded by typically people you don't know, and they're all doing the same thing you are. They're working or studying for something or working towards something. And so that kind of energy around you is gonna promote productivity on your end. So that's another option, is a coffee shop. But then beyond that, you can go back to your school campus or a school campus that's near you and find like their learning center or their student, union, or wherever their big, centralized study zone is, and go, pay the parking pass for the day, or ride your bike over there, or do whatever, and find a place and just park it and study. I mean, that is the best, because people are all around you are going to be studying, and they're going to be doing exactly what you are, and nobody's going to bug you or distract you or try to get you from doing what you're trying to accomplish. So that's kind of another big one. Also, you can also study at your office if you're currently working. I've seen people do that. It seems like there's a lot of distractions, maybe like on the weekend or something, but it gets, it's usually empty. During the times you would be studying, you'd be empty. So it's probably a little bit hard to stay focused then. I'd recommend being around other people that are also doing what you're doing. It doesn't have to be studying for the CPA exam, but it could be, whatever else. Whatever people do at coffee shops, I don't know. And then last but not least, I would say this is very circumstantial, just depends on your circumstance, but if you're kind of in a traditional path, like you're going to graduate in either spring or fall, and you have a couple months until you're going to start working, don't wait to start studying. You've probably even heard this one before, but just start studying as soon as possible, because you want to keep that momentum going from school. And if you can take and pass an exam before you start work, that gives you such a valuable momentum going forward. I can't even explain it. You can just, if you can roll into your new job with 1 or 2 CPA exam sections passed, that will help you so much, because a lot of people that I know, they never took, they took the whole summer off and had some fun, did whatever. And they rolled into work and it was overwhelming, and they didn't have a study routine. It wasn't part of their life. And so they never got their CPA exams done, or they took 3 years, or they're sitting, waiting on a manager promotion based on their CPA exam, latest score. Maybe it's not always manager, it could be senior, waiting for their promotion to senior, but nonetheless, it could be 3 to 4 years before they ever get a chance, because work is pretty intense. And so it's, unless you've built that into your lifestyle that you're studying, then it's going to be really hard to knock it out. So that's a big one. A practical tip for that, and this worked for me, was I signed up for in-class lectures for my first 2 exam parts, because it was during the summer. I graduated in a spring semester, and so I had the whole summer, and I knew that if I was left to my own devices and had to study on my own and wasn't held accountable, there was no way that I was going to study. So I signed up for classes, and I hated like every minute leading up to it, thinking, oh God, I got to go back to school. I graduated in May and then had to start classes in June. I was like, this isn't fair. Like, what am I doing to myself? But I am so glad I did, because I think it was twice a week. Some of them have once a week classes, whatever. But it held me accountable, because I went to class and the teacher would ask questions and they'd lecture you, and you didn't want to show up and not have done the questions or the work or whatever. So those are my plugs. If you like any of those tips, try them out. That's great. If you don't, then good luck. I'm sure you guys will do fine. These aren't make or break things, but they're just things that helped me. And yeah, that's it. So if you like the Audit Cast, you guys, please go online and rate and review our episodes on whatever platform you listen to. So whether that's Stitcher or iTunes or different podcasting apps for Android or whatever you listen on, whether maybe it's the website, just please somehow give us some feedback. Send us a tweet on Twitter. It's at the AuditCast. Let us know, or rate and review us on iTunes. All these things are really, really helpful. You can check us out on Instagram at the AuditCast. You can go to theauditcast.com, and then on Twitter at the AuditCast. So we're everywhere that you... Oh, we have a Facebook account too. It's facebook.com/theauditcast. So if you want to tell us anything, you have a lot of options and a lot of means and ways to do so. So we appreciate everybody listening and really hope this helps. All right. Take care, guys. Gotta get back to work.